So how did you, okay, because I feel like we went from beginning to end. We know it's successful, it's fun, it's exciting, it's authentic, but how did you get there? How did you relay that message to your ideal customers that this is what you want to be and this is where you need to be to experience it?
It's a great question. I think number one, people love history. So that's something that money can't buy, in essence. Like you can't just decide to open a bar or a restaurant one day and speak to its history until you've lived
Right.
it. So we were very lucky. We spent endless time scouring the periodicals, because if you would think you could just search on Google, but Google doesn't pull up like the old ads that used to run in local newspapers, magazines. So we spent a great deal of time searching for those ads where Billie Holiday performed there, Count Basie, Chet Baker, Lena Horne. Like these are icons.
Hmm.
And not only did they perform at Ball and Chain is in the same exact place where it once stood. So they played within these walls. So we really tried to make that part of the experience. And I think also was, design wise, basically not necessarily transporting us back to the 30s and 50s, but how could we recreate the space as if it had been open since 1935, which it was. And again, what would it look like today? A restaurant that opened in 1935 is probably not going to look in some cases it does, but in a lot of cases it doesn't look anything like it would now in 2020. So I think that, and then also, um, staying true to the authenticity of the neighborhood. The best part about Ball and Chain is the neighborhood and the people in the community. You walk Little Havana having nothing to do with us being there, because I didn't spend a lot of time there prior to us opening. I was invited there to really spend some time by Bill Fuller, my best friend, who had been investing in the neighborhood since the mid 90s. And literally before I even knew what Ball and Chain was, you walk the streets and it's this super special little darling of a neighborhood that is just more alive. And as someone that grew up in Miami, I've lived all over. There was nothing more special, and that has nothing to do with Ball and Chain. It was like that before we got there.
And so what has been the, well, I don't really want to touch on this for too long because I know people don't really like to get into the legal aspects of things, but if there are just a few things that you would recommend to people who want to be in the nightlife industry, what are the types of permits that you guys had to get in order to get this thing up and going?
Well, I mean, you need to, obviously, to sell booze, you need to make sure you get the right kind of liquor license, first and foremost. Obviously, when you're building and opening a space, proper permits and, certificate of use and all that stuff. It's really not all that different than if you were going to open any business. You have to jump through hurdles these days, certainly in the city of Miami, to get open. So I don't really think that it was necessarily, and because we were actually, it once existed in the same location and we could prove that it once was a restaurant and all that stuff, that makes it a little bit easier as well. But at the end of the day, really any business is going to be a challenge. And it's just a matter of, putting your heart into it. A lot of people want to be entrepreneurs, and they are, but they're also afraid to give up the security of their jobs. They have to take care of themselves, their families, whatever. And so it's not an easy decision because you never really clock out when you're an entrepreneur. Your mind is always working. There's always things that you could do better. Oh, how could we have improved this guest experience and stuff of that nature?
So what's the one thing you think you have done right through all of this?
I have an amazing team. Number one, I'm blessed that of the three owners, I think that we are all great at very different things. And I think in a ownership group, that is important, because if I have three owners and we're all great at accounting, you don't really need three accountants. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing is that a team in general in any business is only as good as its weakest link. And not to say that we haven't made mistakes along the way, but I would say, across the board, not just at Ball and Chain, but at several of our other, restaurants, night spots, we have the most amazing team. We try to invest in our people. We think it's super important to not only attract the best talent, but to retain the best talent. As in any business, you spend a great deal of time there, especially in the restaurant, food and beverage business. You really have to always be there. But when you have an amazing team, I'm talking from director of operations to general managers to assistant managers, all the way down to servers, runners, our cantineros, our bartenders. We have an incredible team, and Ball and Chain is only what it is because of them.
My last question turns on, hiring talent. How do you know that a performer is a really good one? Because you might like them, but how do you know that the majority of people who, will be there on Friday night are going to like them?
So that is another great question. So I book all of the music, from our live jazz to our DJs to our entertainment. It was not supposed to be that way. When we opened the first month, I had someone else doing it. And not to say that that person wasn't doing a good job, but that person was not doing a good job at executing the vision that we wanted. Mm. I myself am a music lover. I grew up in South Florida, but at an early age, my mom and dad would take my brother and I to listen to jazz in New York. To listen to music all over town. I'm like a wannabe musician, so to speak. I play the piano, but not quite well enough to grace our Pineapple stage. So I knew a lot of the local musicians. I did not know a lot of the local Cuban and Latin musicians. And so that's one of the things that I literally, I'd go on YouTube, I'd go listen to bands play. And at the end of the day, we get, from where we started to now, we get more requests to play than we can really handle in a given time. And I always hate telling people, I would never say to someone, you're not good enough for the Pineapple stage, mm-hmm. Because anyone that's going out there and doing any art form for a living, whether it's music, art, poetry, writing books, whatever, you pour your heart and soul into it. And so one of the things that we try to do is it's not about what I happen to love. I've loved Latin music. Like now it's what, my kids, my son is 5, my daughter's 3. Like that's all we listen to anymore because, they come to Ball and Chain, they want to hear it. They want to watch the video. So it's really all we listen to. But I think it's just being in touch with your guests and knowing what they want. I do think, I do believe I have a little bit of a skilled ear, having listening to music so long, to really recognizing top talent. And we do our best to give everyone a chance to play to our guests.
Just to close out this podcast, I want you to share with everyone where they can be in touch with you and the many nightlife offerings that you have, and also your book.
Oh, okay. I didn't know okay, so it's perfect. So you can find me, the easiest place to find me is on Instagram at Zack, Z-A-C-K, Bush, B-U-S-H-1. And on there, if you follow me there, you can, direct message me, whatever you need. I respond to everyone every time, usually within 24 hours. And if you follow me there, you'll see a collection of things from Ball and Chain, which is, my pride and joy, to our authentic 36-year-old Mexican restaurant that we took over several years back, to a hidden speakeasy upstairs from that Mexican restaurant that's hidden behind an old dulceria, an old candy store where you got to know the password to get in. And you'll also, of course, see, first and foremost, I'm a very proud husband and a proud father. Another thing to speak on entrepreneurship, like you mentioned, the book, is I never set out to be an author. When my oldest was born, I was literally moved. I was moved way beyond I could have ever fathomed I would have been. And then after that, my daughter, and I ended up being determined to write a children's book because we would read to my son and then later my daughter every night. And there were no books where dad was like the main loving character like we often see moms. There was a couple books, like Jimmy Fallon's D is for Dada, but not really along the lines of what I was feeling. So literally, what I would say is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, harder than opening any bars, was getting a publisher behind that book to bring it to life, because I am not an illustrator. And here I am almost 100,000 copies later, 2.5 years later, a national bestseller. And other than my wife and kids, that is probably what I am most proud of, because it really is a piece of my heart and it was so well received. And that was something you don't write a children's book for financial, at least initially for financial purposes. As an unknown author, like you're lucky just to get published. But I really felt that being able to share a piece of me and it being so well received was the greatest gift ever.
Well, maybe we can have you on a follow-up episode and you can talk strictly about that book process.
I would be happy to, because that was the most frustrating, aggravating, yet rewarding, beautiful process that I've ever been through, ever.
Well, we
So
would. We'd be happy to have you in a couple of months and you can talk a little bit more about Ball and Chain and how it's progressed since and talk more about this book.
sure, and anything I can ever do for you and you're come down to this neck of the woods or anything personally and professionally, you know where to find me, and any of your listeners do as well. So it was really nice speaking with you today.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.